Hi everyone, I'm Abigail. This is James, and welcome to another Two Kids interview.
We are joined today by author Stephen Bramucci.
Mr. Bramucci has written the books The Danger Gang and The Pirates of Borneo,
The Danger Gang and the Isle of Feral Beasts, the National Geographic book Rock Stars,
and coming October 3rd, the middle grade novel Race for the Ruby Turtle.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm so glad to be here. You two are amazing, and I really like how you alternate sentences with each other. I assume you two are really close friends, and I want to have someone I'm just constantly alternating sentences like that with. It's fun.
Thanks. Pirates aren't known for being wonderful people, but people love the idea of pirates. Why do you think that is?
Of all the interviews I've done in my life, that is the best first question I could possibly imagine. Pirates are, look, I think they ultimately inspire a lot of curiosity in us, mostly because I think anyone who lives outside the boundaries of society inspires a lot of curiosity in us. You know, they don't go to school 5 days a week, and they don't have a mortgage to pay on a house, and they don't have to clean the dishes after dinner and all those things. I think that really makes people really curious. I think to get really deep, which is something I'm always happy to do, you know, humans, in my understanding of the universe, humans are always pushing towards more freedom. Like if you look at over the past 300 years, let's say, there's been more freedom across cultures, how people express themselves across a culture, but also individually more freedom, right? And pirates, for a lot of us, are the ultimate examples of what it looks like to be free. They're off sailing. Now, here's the problem with this. I did an interview a long time ago on a national news station, and at the end they were like, yeah, what's the difference between like pirates of the golden age and pirates who are robbing and stealing things on the ocean today in 2023, or that was, you know, a few years ago. And I think part of the difference is that when it comes to crimes, we look at them a little more favorably when they happened 500 years ago, right? Like we go, oh, that was with swords and cannons, and it wasn't so bad. But pirates were also, you know, the realistic thing is they were committing a lot of crime.
What exactly makes a person an adventurer?
Oh my gosh, these are the best questions. Did you guys come up with these yourself?
Yeah.
Good. They're so good. That's like the biggest question in the world, and it's like something I would love to talk about for a decade. Here's my best answer. What makes someone an adventurer is up to them. Like I could go out in the ocean, right? And I'm a pretty solid surfer. I'm a pretty good surfer. If I took you two out in the ocean on a day when the waves are pretty small and manageable, it doesn't feel like some wild adventure to me. But if I took you two out and it's your first time surfing, if it's not, let's just pretend it is, and it's your first time surfing and you surf, that is a wild adventure, right? That's like, it's big. And I think, you know, the mystery in life and the beautiful thing in life is to be able to find adventure wherever you are. Just like the cool thing is to be able to find beauty wherever you are. Right? Like one of the hardest things in the world is like we go to, let's say, my favorite country I've ever been to, which is Madagascar. We go to Madagascar. I go to Madagascar and I look at the leaf-tailed gecko, this animal that can completely blend into the background of a tree. I mean, I don't mean kind of. I'm talking like perfectly. So I look at that animal and I get the shivers and I get the chills and I go, wow, what a majestic animal. But then like my home state of Oregon, if I go look at a newt, which, you know, I was in Oregon last week and my son and I were exploring a creek and we found like 200 newts in about 30 minutes. That's also a majestic animal. And that's why after two novels that were set on the high seas and one was set in Borneo, why I wanted to write a book in the first place that was like, no, this is here in the United States. This is, you know, this is something that people can relate to a little bit more. So yeah, that's my answer is like, we all have to determine what adventure is for ourselves. I'm going to make it one sentence longer. I think that it's kind of when you get that like spine tingly, something is going on here feeling. Like if we all went to a rope swing together and you had that feeling of like, oh, I'm doing something. It makes me feel like I gotta like try really hard to hold on to this rope. Then that's like the feeling of adventure to me, or at least that's where it starts.
We read and really enjoyed and recommended Race for the Ruby Turtle. Was there anything from your own adventures that helped you come up with the idea for this book?
Yes, there. I mean, almost all of it. Like, I really want to and thank you, because I know I have a lot of interviews about this book coming up, and this is actually the first one, and I got to get used to talking about it without giving away how it ends and things like that. It's a thing that I have to practice, but um, you know, I actually the big themes of how humans interact with nature, and even a really monstrous theme, giant theme of like how much dominion and control should we have over the animal world at all, is something that I knew I wanted to touch on, and that's like a really hard thing to wrestle with. Like I have really mixed feelings about humans having pets. I got to kind of figure that out, and the way I figure things out is by writing a book about it and giving the characters some of these same dilemmas. I certainly have very mixed feelings about how humans take care of nature and preserve nature, and even some of the preservation that we've actually done doesn't always seem right to me, and is worth thinking about. One of the things is that we put a lot of preservation into animals that look a lot like us. We are also animals, and we preserve mammals a lot because they remind us of ourselves, right? Like all mammals have hair. Oh, and we have hair. We're mammals. And mammals give live birth, and we give live birth, and we're mammals. And so we put a lot of money into protecting mammals and very little into protecting reptiles, amphibians, predators. Sharks for decades, when other animals were being protected, sharks were still being rampantly killed across the planet. And so I wanted to explore that theme. And then I wanted to write a love letter to the rain. I'm from Oregon. It's very rainy there. And I like the rain. And as a reader, like the rain puts me in this certain place of like, a lot of the houses where I grew up are kind of older, and they're from a different era. And there's these little things called window seats where you're like sitting right under a window and the rain's like pattering down. And I was like, I want to write a book that at least one kid on the planet Earth will read when it's raining. And I want to kind of capture that. And so there was little feelings that I had where I said, I really want to like get this bit.
Because you travel all over the world, you have gotten haircuts all over the world. Can you tell us about the worst haircut you got in your travels?
You two are the best researchers. I love this. I have gotten haircuts all over the world. Just so you know, the reason why I do it is because a barber usually has a steady business. They're not relying on tourists. So a lot of times when people travel a lot, they'll say like, "Oh, the people were so nice," which is fine and great. But a lot of times those people were people who they were paying money to. They were tour operators or hotel clerks or things like that. And so for me, I cut my hair, and I often go to the post office because I want to meet people who aren't involved in the tourism business and see how they act and see what they're interested in and see what they care about. So yeah, I do get haircuts everywhere. And there is a worst one. It was looking like it was going to be the best haircut I ever got. It was in the city of Tione, which is a very small village where my family is from in Italy. And halfway through, I told the guy in broken Italian, I was like, this is an amazing haircut. It's the best haircut I've ever gotten. And it was. It looked so good. It fit for my head. And I was so excited. And I don't know if like me saying that made him think like, okay, I'm going to start experimenting a little bit, or what it was. But he started like then cutting different ways, and all of a sudden it just fell apart, and it just like didn't look good, and it was so short. And I remember walking out of the haircut, and it just like didn't fit with my face. I have a very prominent nose, and I need a little bit of hair to like balance it all out. And I remember I was so desperate and just felt kind of like a good haircut can make you feel so good about yourself, and a bad one makes you feel like you're not even yourself. I was so desperate. I actually dunked my whole head in a fountain, like one of those Italian fountains with like a little angel in the middle spouting up water. And I just dunked my whole head in there to just try to wash off the whole experience. And then when I popped up soaking wet, the whole village, which is a very small village, was kind of looking at me like, this American is a strange character. And that was the worst haircut I ever got.
What is your process when putting a book together?
Do you decide the end before the middle?
Or do you put it together in order?
I usually know where I'm headed, right? But it would be really boring if I knew where I was headed and I always got exactly there. So the ending of this book changed dramatically very late, pretty late. My editor was like, I kind of like how you ended it, but I think it could be better in this, in this way. And she was absolutely right. And it was really cool. And so it changed a lot. I have a book that I'm working on soon where I think I know how it's going to end, but I want to make sure in the writing process that it can change, because if it couldn't, then I'm not really being honest to anyone. I'm not being honest to the characters because they don't get to choose what to do all of a sudden. They're not actually choosing anything if I'm pointing them to one place. I'm not really being honest to myself and my own creativity because I'm saying like, oh, this is already set in stone when it's really not. And so, yeah, I try to stay as flexible as I can, but I usually have like some idea of a nice moment at the end when I start. Let me put it to you another way, just in case you have viewers or listeners or either of you wants to write. I think like there are a couple of things that you need to come together in order to say like, okay, I'm going to spend a big chunk of my time on something and I know I can finish it, because I really don't like doing things if I don't think I'll finish it. And so it's like, maybe it's just one character. Maybe it's 5 details. Maybe it's a joke. For my second novel, The Danger Gang and The Island of Feral Beasts, it was actually just one joke that I thought was funny. And I was like, I actually think I could power a whole book. Just that joke is so good to me. I think I could power a whole book through with it. But in this case, there was like a couple different factors, which I laid out for you before. And I was like, okay, I think I could power that through. And to your question, the ending was one of them. I kind of had an idea of where I wanted to head.
When you are writing different characters in the book, do you have to change your mindset for each character?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I try to go into their prism and how they see the world and what their view of things is and how do they think? Because otherwise then you can accidentally use characters just as a way to get your own ideas across, and there are a lot of characters in this book who think a little bit like how I think. Jake has ADHD, which I have. He's a kid with ADHD and poor impulse control, which I was. And then Hedel is kind of a renegade in how she thinks in a way that's really radical a lot of the times. And that really reminds me of the me who I am right now. And I wanted to introduce some of those really big ideas that she wrestles with. They're a lot for kids to take on. And so I liked her as a way to kind of introduce kids to some of these ideas.
We have interviewed a number of authors who have had books banned in certain places.
That means in those places, kids don't have the same access to books that we have and may not be able to see themselves represented in books.
Can you give us your feelings on this current trend?
Yes, I can. That's another amazing and powerful and great question. I think that those book bannings and any suppression of information is being done by people who are living in a state of fear. If you don't want people to have information, then you're fearful of some information. And I feel like fear is, especially wrong-headed fear, there's things that you're going to fear in this life that you're right to have some fear for. The ocean, right? But wrong-headed fear about how people identify, about people's racial background, all these things, fear like that is first of all the enemy of all humanity, right? Like if we are living in that sort of fear, like I want to control what information people have about someone's gender identification, for instance, I think that shrinks our way of looking at humans, and I think it's toxic and it comes out of fear. I think that humanity trends towards, as I said at the beginning of the interview, trends towards more freedom. Barack Obama said that in one of his most famous speeches. The long arc of humanity it bends towards justice, and I think humanity trends towards more freedom, both in the societal sense and in the personal sense. And so anything that would limit someone's personal freedom about how they identify, about their history, about their even in my book, like about their neurodiversity, how their unique brain works. The suppression of any of that, I think, is probably harmful. I think the goal for society should actually be the opposite of closing things down and telling people you can't have this, you can't have this, you can't have this. It's actually a widening lens of like, no, the more the better. The more people with different ideas, the more people with new ways of looking at things, the more cultural backgrounds, racial backgrounds, gender identities, etc. Whatever it is, I think more freedom is better for humanity. And I think anyone trying to suppress that is mistaken.
We agree. Speaking of a different kind of fear, when you first started writing books, were you worried at all if you could do it?
Yes. These are the best questions. You two are unbelievable. Yeah, I'm worried that I could do it. I worry if I could do it tomorrow. I think that doing something really helps. And once you've done it a few times, it helps. But then there's a different way that you want to do it in, and you want to do it bigger, or you want to do it deeper, or you want to do it better, or whatever. And so, there's always that's what we're doing as humans. But I also believe very deeply that remembering that we're all just humans is so good, right? A lot of times we can say to ourselves like, oh, that guy's like a cool author. He's somehow distanced from me. Or if there was a celebrity that you two liked to look at on the television or thought was cool, or someone's music, they're different than me. Almost like we treat people when they've accomplished certain things, or if there are governors or presidents, etc., as if they're a different species, right? Like, wow. But that's just not how it is. We're all just people, right? The person who drew the cover of the book is just a person with their insecurities and fears, and the person who wrote the book is a person, and the two interviewers are people, and everyone's trying their best, and no one quite knows what they're doing, and we're all just kind of making it up, and we build a society that way. Hopefully, in trying our best and learning the most, we build a society that skews towards justice and freedom, which I think are kind of the two highest human values. But yeah, I mean, I didn't know that I could write it, just like I didn't know that I could have kids. But then one day I had them and I figured it out. And one day I sat down and I decided to write a book. And that's kind of all there is to it sometimes. I mean, in some ways, it's not even more complicated than that. It's like you say you're going to do a thing, and then you go like, all right, I'm going to do it somehow.
What writer has had the most influence on you?
I mean, there's so many that I like. I want to give you the right answer. A lot. It's, I'm really interested in humor, and so I like Mark Twain a lot. There's a lot of TV and film writers who I like a lot. I go back to certain books over and over and over because I like them. Gary Paulson is someone in the children's book world. He's the guy who wrote Hatchet. And he's really interesting to me. I really liked Hatchet, and he influenced me a lot in the children's book world. There's a million, I think. Roald Dahl in the children's book world, I really like Roald Dahl also. There's certain books. I'm a weird reader. There's some novels that I reread like every year of my life. I reread them once because I like to do that. I like to study one person really deep. Or there's some books that I reread after 10 years because I really like them so much, or that I never read again.
What advice do you have for young people who want to write?
Okay, I think the advice they get the most is to read a lot, which is valid and interesting. But I also think anyone who wants to write has probably heard that first and foremost. So I will give another piece of advice, which is to like really take your time to cultivate what you like. Writing what you like is the only way to do something. Right? I can't project what kids are going to like. I can't project what you two are going to like. I just had to sit down and go like, I really like this. Okay. I'm still liking it. I like this, or this made me laugh, or this made me cry. I was telling someone last week, like I started crying in when I was reading the ending of Ruby Turtle for the book on tape, and I had to like take a break. And the studio recorder was like, haven't he was kind of confused almost, and he was like, haven't you like read this book like 60 times? You wrote it. And I was like, yeah, but it made me feel something. And if it hadn't, I couldn't expect anyone else to feel something. So I would say, like, figure out what you like, figure out and just chase that. Like, what do you like to read adventure novel? You like to read adventure novels. You like the idea of adventure, then write something adventurous. You like to write, you like to read about swordplay, then write a novel about knights and princesses and the Knights of the Round Table, etc. Just chase what you like and find an audience for that. That's the best barometer of anything.
Soon, other kids will be able to have the excitement of reading Race for the Ruby Turtle. Since we've already read it, can you tell us about another project you are working on that we can be excited for?
Yes. It's going to be exclusive just with you two. Because I haven't talked about this at all, but I'm excited about it. So Gary Paulson, who I mentioned earlier, wrote this book, Hatchet, that a lot of kids in America read. It takes place up in Canada, and it's about a boy who gets in a plane wreck. And I mentioned earlier that I'm a pretty serious surfer. And I met Gary Paulson, and we had some good talks before he died. He died a few years ago, and I really liked him. And my editor, who is brilliant, said, you should do your version of Hatchet. You should do your version of a boy who gets stranded. And that idea really excited me. And I'm doing my version of Hatchet, but rather than being stranded in the Canadian wilderness, which is an area I don't know really well, I want him to be stranded while he's on a surfing trip. And that is something I know really well. And so I'm doing kind of like my version of a Castaway book. There's so many of those, Swiss Family Robinson and Robinson Crusoe and Hatchet and all these different books about people being out in the wild alone and having to rely on their wits. And I'm doing my version of that connected to a surfer. Like, a surfer is the kid who gets stranded. So I'm very excited about it.
I'd read that.
Definitely me too.
Thank you. I'm going to come to you two when it's out. I'm going to be like, you promised to read it, both of you.
Finally, it's time for a Turbo
10 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Number 1, what is your favorite phrase to use?
Oh, I'm supposed to be rapid. Okay. Phrase, my favorite rapid fire phrase. My favorite phrase is let's go. Like, let's go. Because to me, it like fills up the idea of like being so alive.
That's mine too.
Do you have a favorite phrase? I can't think of anything.
Maybe let's go.
Let's go. That's a good one.
All right.
Number 2, what is one subject you'd love to learn more about?
I haven't learned about yet, or one that I just keep learning about?
One that you haven't learned yet.
I need to get really fluent in another language. I speak bits and pieces of like 3 languages, but I need to get, and I'm the closest to Spanish, so I need to get like perfectly fluent in Spanish, if that counts as a subject. Otherwise, no, let's do that. Spanish language.
Number 3, what is your go-to snack food?
It would definitely be cheese of some sort. Oh, I have cheese with almost every meal in some way or another. Cheese and milkshakes. Those are 2 foods that I love dearly.
Okay, this isn't part of the rapid fire questions, but I've been asking this to like every author we've interviewed. What's your favorite cheese?
Ooh, good one. Parmigiano Reggiano from Italy, or super sharp cheddar from Oregon. Those are my favorite cheeses. I
Good
love
choice.
that. These are great questions.
Number 4, what was your favorite book growing up?
Favorite book growing up. Hold on. It was that. I know it's come up a couple times, so it seems like I'm just hitting the same note over and over, but it was Hatchet for a certain time when I was a kid. That was my absolute favorite. And then my dad used to bring me these comics on the days I was sick from this cat called Heathcliff that was kind of like Garfield, but more mischievous. and those are great too.
Number 5. If you could teleport somewhere right now, where would you go?
I'm a travel writer. This is the hardest question for me on earth. I would go right this second because of the mood I'm in. I would go to the Mentawai Islands in Indonesia, and I would be surfing all alone on a wave in crystal clear water. Yeah, I would be happy there.
Number 6. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Freeze time, I think. I think I'd like freeze time and get some stuff done and get organized so that I could like do the things I actually wanted to do when everyone else was awake. So I would like freeze time and take a 5-hour nap and then turn time back on and feel energized and feel great. I think that's what I would do.
Number 7. What was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
DuckTales. DuckTales was like a adventurous Indiana Jones with ducks by the Disney Channel.
Yeah.
Number 8. What is your favorite rainy day activity?
Reading.
Number 9. If you could have any 3 dinner guests, who would they be?
Jeez, that's a tough one. Oh my, how are you guys gonna make that a speed question? That's a tough. Are they have to be alive?
No.
Mark Twain, Lauryn Hill. That's a musician who made what I think is probably the best album of the past 100 years. So I think her and Mark Twain together would be kind of fun. And then I would like my dad to be there, and he's passed away. So if I can pull him back from being passed away and get him back from the stardust for this dinner, I'd like him to come.
Number 10. What is the best piece of advice you were ever given?
When you latch onto something good, when you find your thing and it's resonating with people and it's working or it's making you happy or whatever it is, to hit the gas on that stuff, to really step fully into yourself. I guess it's just to be yourself, to step fully into yourself. But part of that is like saying like, wow, this thing really excites me. And then diving deep into that rather than like skipping all around.
You were awesome. Thank you so much for doing that.
And thank you so much for spending this time with us.
We can't wait to read your future books.
You two are great, and I appreciate you so much, and this was so much fun, and thank you for your excitement about the book, and thank you for supporting my work, and I'm just really impressed by both of you, and keep it up, because it's awesome. What you're doing is really, really cool.